On this Silverado, P0201 points us toward the cylinder 1 fuel injector control circuit. In plain language, the engine controller may not be seeing the injector command and the actual circuit response line up the way it expects. The truck may run rough, may misfire, may have reduced power, or may turn the check engine light on. Broadly, we're looking at a possible injector problem, wiring issue, connector or terminal concern, or in some cases, a control module driver issue. Also keep in mind, the fuel injectors in this system operate in a 50 to 90 volt range, so treat this as a controlled electrical circuit diagnosis, not just a fuel delivery guess. Start with the basic system checks first, then follow a structured diagnostic approach, so you do not chase the wrong branch. Before getting into circuit testing, understand when the monitor is valid. The engine needs to be running. Battery voltage has to be greater than 11 volts, and once those running conditions are met, the check runs continuously. The fault sets when the commanded state of the control circuit does not match the actual state for greater than 1 second. For the initial check, put the ignition on with the vehicle in service mode. If other codes are present, use them only to choose the correct test path. If no code is currently set, run the engine and watch the cylinder current misfire counters while you wiggle the harness and connectors at the engine control module. If the counter increments during that wiggle test, repair the wiring, terminals, or connector issue you just exposed. If the misfire counter does not increment during the wiggle test, operate the vehicle under the conditions that run the code. If you have captured operating data from when the fault happened, use those same conditions to try to make the fault return. The goal here is simple. Confirm P0201 stays gone before you move on. If it sets again, pause and go back through the earlier diagnostic path instead of guessing at a repair. For the first circuit test path on cylinder 1, turn the ignition and vehicle off, then disconnect connector X3 at the K20 engine control module. On the cylinder 1 injector control circuit, test terminal 72 to ground. You should see infinite resistance. If you see less than infinite resistance, disconnect the cylinder 1 fuel injector connector and retest that same control module harness terminal to ground. If it still shows less than infinite resistance, repair the short to ground on that circuit. If it changes to infinite resistance, move to the other side of the injector circuit and test control module harness terminal 52 to ground. Less than infinite resistance there means repair the short to ground. Infinite resistance there supports replacing the Q17 fuel injector. If the first ground check is clean, turn the ignition on with the vehicle in service mode and test terminal 72 to ground for less than 1 volt. If you find 1 volt or greater, disconnect the cylinder 1 injector and retest terminal 72 at the control module harness. If 1 volt or greater remains, repair the short to voltage on that circuit. If it drops to less than 1 volt with the injector disconnected, repair the short to voltage on the corresponding terminal 52 circuit. If the voltage check passes, turn the ignition and vehicle off. Disconnect the cylinder 1 injector connector and check circuit resistance from control module harness terminal 52 to injector terminal 1, and from control module harness terminal 72 to injector terminal 2. Each path should be less than 2 ohms. If either path is 2 ohms or greater, repair the open or high resistance in that circuit. If both paths are less than 2 ohms, move into injector component testing. If the injector tests bad, replace the Q17 fuel injector. If the injector tests good and the circuit checks have passed, replace the K20 engine control module. If the code combination sends you into the second test path, the beginning is the same. With the ignition and vehicle off, disconnect connector X3 at the K20 engine control module. For cylinder 1, check terminal 72 to ground for infinite resistance. If it is less than infinite resistance, disconnect the cylinder 1 injector and retest the control module harness terminal. If the short to ground remains, repair that circuit. If the short goes away, check terminal 52 to ground. Less than infinite resistance means repair that short to ground. Infinite resistance supports replacing the injector. If the ground check passes, turn the ignition on with the vehicle in service mode and check terminal 72 to ground for less than 1 V. A reading of 1 V or greater is handled by disconnecting the injector and separating whether the short to voltage is on terminal 72 or the corresponding terminal 52 circuit. Once the voltage check passes, turn the ignition and vehicle off, disconnect the injector, and check terminal 52 to injector terminal 1 and terminal 72 to injector terminal 2 for less than 2 ohms. Repair any open or high resistance if you find 2 ohms or greater. On the second test path, if the circuit resistance is less than 2 ohms, check for a short between the 2 control circuits at the component harness. Test between control circuit terminal 1 and control circuit terminal 2. You should have infinite resistance. If you find less than infinite resistance, repair the short between the circuits. If that check shows infinite resistance, move into injector component testing. If the injector has a fault, replace the Q17 fuel injector. If the injector tests good and the circuit checks have passed, replace the K20 engine control module. If the code combination sends you into the third test path, turn the ignition and vehicle off. Disconnect connector X3 at the K20 engine control module, and disconnect the cylinder 1 fuel injector connector. At the component harness, test between control circuit terminal 1 and control circuit terminal 2. The expected result is infinite resistance. If you see less than infinite resistance, repair the short between the circuits. If the circuit shows infinite resistance, test or replace the Q17 fuel injector as directed by that branch. For component testing, keep the ignition and vehicle off and disconnect the cylinder 1 injector connector. The resistance specifications apply with the component at room temperature. Measure between control circuit terminal 1 and control circuit terminal 2. The injector should be 1 to 3 ohms. If it is not between 1 and 3 ohms, replace the Q17 fuel injector. If that resistance is correct, check each terminal of the component to the injector housing. Each one should show infinite resistance. If either terminal shows less than infinite resistance to the housing, replace the Q17 fuel injector. If both terminal to housing checks show infinite resistance, the component test is okay. After the repair, verify the repair and confirm the code stays gone. Keep the verification separate from the circuit testing. Make sure the operating conditions are met, confirm the fault does not reset, and make sure the truck behaves normally. The takeaway on P0201 is to isolate the cylinder 1 injector circuit in order: ground short, voltage short, open or high resistance, circuit to circuit short where required, then the injector itself, and only then the controller if the supported test path gets you there. For more diagnostic training, visit stepdiagnostics.com.